Could Jeff McNeil be the best replacement for Brandon Nimmo in the Mets outfield in 2023? On the show today, I'll explore if moving Nimmo into right is the best move when it could open the door to signing one of the top-tier infield free agents this offseason.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. If you want to find any of my work, follow me on Twitter at FinkelsteinRyan. You can also find some of my writing at justbaseball.com, where I work as the managing editor. Now, today I wanted to discuss the idea of moving Jeff McNeil into right field, and the idea being you could move Jeff McNeil into right full-time next season, and that would open the door to bring in somebody else to play second base. And when you look at the free agent class, you have Aaron Judge and Brandon Nimmo atop the outfield market, and then there's a steep decline beyond that. Meanwhile, there's 4 top-tier shortstops that will hit free agency that could be better offensive players for the Mets than anything they could get in the outfield if it is not Aaron Judge or Brandon Nimmo. So could you sign a Trey Turner, a Dansby Swanson, a Carlos Correa, a Xander Bogaerts? Those would be the names that would potentially come to the Mets to play next to Francisco Lindor. Now, we'll get into that fit in the next segment here, but the first part of this is moving McNeil into right field, and I think that's really a complicated decision because Jeff McNeil's a fantastic second baseman, and also we've seen the value in him playing both spots. So even if you were to sign one of these guys, you'd still probably want to bring in another outfielder because you never know if an injury were to pop up, if you need Jeff McNeil to play second or third base or something like that, instead of just being a primary right fielder all year. But could he hang out there? I mean, you look at the stats early in his career, and he has fared very well out there. I mean, he was worth 1 defensive run saved when he got plenty of playing time there in 2019 and 300 innings, and only 30 innings. In 2020, he was worth 2 defensive runs saved. Last year, he was just 0. So not anything lost or gained with McNeil in right field. He gets good jumps. He doesn't make errors out there. Will he get to the same amount of balls as an elite defensive outfielder? Is he going to be a step down from Starling Marte in right field? Yes, but that's the question here is you're basically prioritizing defense over offense a little bit, but I think McNeil could hang, and you look at what he did based on outs above average in right field, and in 2019 it was -2, 2020 it was +1, last year he didn't play any right field in 2021, but was worth 1 out above average in left, and then this past season he was worth 1 out above average in left, 0 in right. So that's where you are with this. I think he could play right field, and I think it is a card that the Mets have at their disposal to say, all right, we're going to move Starling Marte back into center field. We're going to have Jeff McNeil be our primary right fielder. Maybe you get somebody else that can play the position as your 4th outfielder that has some offensive upside. But it's one of those moves that I think it's a plan, C more than anything, because plan A might be to retain Brandon Nimmo, or of course, if the Mets are really planning on making the massive waves with the pie in the sky signing of Aaron Judge, yeah, that is obviously the best thing they could do to address their outfield and to replace a Brandon Nimmo. But short of those 2 guys, I think that I like Jeff McNeil in the outfield more than I like Jock Peterson necessarily, than I would like even Michael Conforto in some respects. Now, I still like that idea, but who would be the better player all around next season? If you're just talking about in a vacuum, and that is assuming that you're signing another top-tier free agent to play second base. I mean, Jeff McNeil is a good option for the Mets. He's not the best option. I still think him playing second base should be the long-term idea for McNeil throughout his career in a Mets uniform. He is a second baseman. That is his best position. That's where his defense plays up the most. I think having him and Lindor up the middle is a massive benefit to the pitching staff. But I also could see a world where you're looking at your options, and let's just say you get to a point, throughout the offseason where, Nimmo gets a big bag elsewhere. Aaron Judge is retained by the Yankees. Maybe one of the free agent shortstops comes off the board, but who knows? Let's just say you get into late January and Xander Bogaerts is just hanging out there, not really getting the offers that he wants, and he sees an opportunity to play with the Mets and to get a good contract and to play for a winner. That is something that you can consider because those are some of the best free agents available right now. And it's a matter of trying to fill out this roster and trying to find an upgrade offensively. Because ultimately, if you are moving on from Brandon Nimmo, you would hope that you can get a better offensive option in here to improve your team. And really, to me, it comes down to the home run ball. Can you find someone with some more juice that makes it worth it to say goodbye to a guy in Nimmo who, we went through the numbers the other day, was still an unbelievable contributor, arguably a top 4, top 5 outfielder in baseball this year, who was a 5 F4 center fielder. That is the problem that we still come back to here is, are any of these guys going to be better than Brandon Nimmo? Good enough, both defensively and offensively, that it's worth it to move McNeil back out at second base to accommodate them. So that's what we'll explore in just a minute. Before we do, though, I don't know about you, but I hate wearing dress shirts. They're never comfortable. They don't usually fit right. It's hard to find a size that fits me well. The material's never really that comfortable. Really, the dress shirt was just due for a radical reinvention, and that is where Rhone stepped in. They have created the Rhone commuter shirt, which is the most comfortable, breathable, and flexible shirt known to man. Rhone's comfortable 4-way stretch fabric provides breathability and flexibility that leaves you free to enjoy what life throws your way from your commute to work to your 18 holes on the golf course. It's time to feel confident with a wrinkle-free shirt without the hassle because Rhone's wrinkle release technology, wrinkles will disappear as you stretch and wear your shirt throughout the day. It's that easy. It's also infused with their Gold Fusion anti-odor technology, so you'll be smelling fresh and clean all day long. And on top of that, Rhone is 100% machine washable, so you can ditch the dry cleaner altogether. The commuter shirt can get you through work any day and straight into whatever comes next. Head to Rhone.com/lockedon. Use the promo code lockedon to save 20% off your entire order. That's 20% off your entire order when you head to Rhone. That's RHONE.com/lockedon. And again, use the code lockedon. It's time to find your corner office comfort with Rhone. Now, if you're going to move off of Brandon Nimmo this offseason, and also on top of that, move Jeff McNeil from his primary position at second base into right field, you have to be signing a player that you can not only get on a pretty decent contract, but also one that improves your lineup. Because defensively, you're going to take a little bit of a step back, I believe. If you move from Nimmo in center field, who was great there, and Jeff McNeil, who was great at second base, you're getting worse up the middle. Can Starling Marte play as good of a center field as Nimmo? I think he still can, but that's also not a sure thing. It could even be a slight step back there. And then McNeil from Marte and right's going to be a step back. So you want a really solid defender at second base, and all these shortstops we're going to go through here would be that. But you also want them to be an upgrade over Nimmo offensively. So looking through the options, and what I did here is I looked at the stats from 2018 to 2022. So that is, the last 5 seasons, right? This way we can get a sense of what these guys have been leading into free agency. And a lot of them by that point have started to play full time. And you look at the shortstop leaderboards, they're all in the top 10. So we'll start with the candidate that I just don't see the Mets getting, and that's Dansby Swanson. Now, I don't know if he's going back to the Braves. I wouldn't pay Dansby Swanson off of this year. He did look pretty bad in the playoffs, but it's not even that. It's just you look at his career, and overall, through everything up to this point, a .255 career hitter, .321 on base, .417 slugging, WRC plus measures hitters based on a league average of 100. And a 94 WRC plus, he's been 6% worse than your league average hitter. He only has 2 seasons, or actually technically 3, but the first one was his rookie year, so not a ton of sample, where he has graded out based on WRC plus as an above average hitter. You have 2020, which is a shortened season. 60 games, was a 115 WRC plus, hit 274, 345 on base, 464 slugging, 10 homers in those 60 games. And this year, he played every single game for the Braves. Hit 277, 329 on base, 447 slugging, had 25 home runs, 116 WRC plus, and he did hit 27 home runs last year. But I think he brings a lot of his value, particularly this season with the defense at short. While I think he would be a really good defensive second baseman, I just think some team's going to pay for him to be their shortstop, and I don't think that he is a real offensive upgrade over Brandon Nimmo. While he does bring more pop to the lineup, which I think the Mets desperately need, you're going to take a big step back when it comes to the strikeout. Still struck out 26% of the time this past year, and the on-base percentage. I just don't know if that is the piece that makes sense. So you go beyond Swanson. Carlos Correa. Now, Correa, where is he going to sign, and what position does he play? Because if he's not playing shortstop, it's probably third base. And with Brett Beatty coming through the pipeline, even a Mark Vientos, while I don't think that he's ever really going to hang defensively at third base, we can never count out these guys to hear the noise about them defensively, take an offseason, and improve. Because at one point we said Pete Alonso couldn't play first, and here he is. So I won't count out Vientos someday getting to third base. I just wouldn't bet on it at this point. Still, with Beatty in tow, with Eduardo Escobar still factoring into the mix, I don't necessarily see third base as being vacant next season. So then you're pushing Correa to second. Does that make a lot of sense with his ginormous arm? I don't know. The bottom line with Carlos Correa is he's a great talent. He really is. And when it comes to the home run threat, I mean, he might be the best option of this class of shortstops, but he also could get paid like the best option. And there's the injury concern with Correa, because he had the 2021 season where he played 148 games. He had the 2016 season where he played 153 games. This past year he played 136, but a lot of injuries mixed in throughout his career there, and you just don't entirely know the player you're going to get. Is he going to continue to be what he's been the last 2 years? I would bet on it, but I think, again, the question there is the defensive fit and what contract he's going to get, because he still comes into this free agent year now at 28, and he's going to look for the bag. I mean, he wants to get the contract Lindor has, and I don't foresee that being the player the Mets go for here. So then it comes down to the other two, Trea Turner and Xander Bogaerts. How much money is Trea Turner going to get? And is he worth getting paid, potentially more than any of these guys? I think defensively at second base, Trea Turner makes a ton of sense. I think his defense would play up there. You look at what he's done since 2018, and he is, the second best shortstop in baseball when it comes to FWAR to Francisco Lindor. Lindor at 26.6, Trea Turner at 24.9. To read off these other guys, you got Bogaerts at 22.4, Correa at 18.9, but he's played over 100 games less than all of these guys, and Swanson's all the way down at 15.4. So you look at the WAR, and Trey Turner's the most valuable. Stolen bases, he has stole more bags than any other shortstop at 149 steals. Actually, that could be the most in baseball. I'm trying to look now. Yes, since 2018, the second best is Starling Marte at 133, and Whit Merrifield tied there as well. But getting back to his comp among shortstops, 99 home runs, showed to have good pop. That's seventh most. That is behind Lindor and Bogaerts, but it is ahead of Correa just based on playing more games, being more available. The steals I already mentioned. He scored 453 runs. I think that is very attractive. I know we don't look at that as a stat that's directly correlated to him. It's about being on good teams, but there are certain guys that find a way to score. I think we saw that from Lindor this year, and Trea Turner built very similarly. You look at the walk rate, 7.5%, solid, but the strikeout rate is 17.9%, really good. He's a good contact hitter, 301 average, 357 on base, 486 slugging. He would add a dynamic with the speed that the Mets don't have other than Starling Marte. I think that he would replace Nimmo in that leadoff spot potentially, but the on base would take a bit of a hit. And you look at what he did this year. I mean, 298 hitter, 343 on base, 466 slugging. We compare that to Nimmo, and the WRC plus is 6 points lower. The on-base percentage is over 20 points lower. The average is 20 points higher, but again, it's about getting on base. The slugging is a little bit better, but his 21 home runs are only slightly more than Nimmo had at 16. So if you're going to pay double for Trey Turner, it might make more sense to bring Nimmo back. And then the other option is Xander Bogaerts. What would you think about Bogaerts? Now, for him this past season, 307 hitter, 377 on base, 456 slugging, a 134 WRC plus, 15 homers in 150 games. So it doesn't necessarily bring you more pop. It's a player that I think across his career has been better. He's been more durable than a Nimmo, so we like that. But I don't know. So getting back to this entire conversation, we're talking about the shortstop market and these guys that are available. Based on where the Mets are right now, it's a good fallback plan, but it's an expensive one. Are any of these guys going to fall into the Mets price range? And the one that jumps out to me just based on price is Xander Bogaerts. Could Bogaerts, as, I don't know what you rank him. If you rank him behind Turner and Correa, the third best shortstop in this class, and defensively, even though he had a good year, I think there's teams that would maybe not want him to be their shortstop. They would see Swanson as a better defensive fit. Could he fall into the Mets price range enough where he would be cheaper than a Brandon Nimmo? Or at least in the same neighborhood. I think it's possible, but I think the way that would happen is if you drag your feet on Nimmo, he signs elsewhere, and then you're sort of left scrambling to fill that need through free agency. But does this mean that keeping the band together is the best option, and just bringing Nimmo back over these guys is the way to go? We'll discuss that in just a minute, but if you haven't tried the Built Bar Puffs yet, you're depriving yourself of one of life's greatest joys, especially with their delicious, indulgent cookie dough chunk puff flavor. I mean, these are light and chewy in texture with real cookie dough chunks, and of course, they come covered in 100% real chocolate, so you get all of the joys of eating cookie dough without the hassle of making it. Plus, it's actually healthy for you. Cookie dough chunk puffs are only 160 calories, and they have a whopping 15 grams of protein in them. They are perfect for breakfast in the morning is one time where I like to eat the cookie dough chunk bars. You can also have them as a dessert, as a snack after a workout. Really, any time is the right time for some Built Bars. If you want to try Built Bars today, make sure you go to Built.com and use the promo code LOCKEDON15. You're going to get 15% off your next order. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDON15 for 15% off at Built.com. So going through the numbers here on Brandon Nimmo compared to these free agents, WRC plus is the all-encompassing metric that we just mentioned, right? Measuring hitters based on a league average of 100. 134 was Nimmo's WRC plus this year. Last year was 137. 2020 it was 149. Look at the rest of these guys. Trey Turner, 128, 142, 159 in the shortened season, but a 124 career WRC plus. Nimmo's career WRC plus is 134. So Nimmo has been, now this is based solely on that one metric, a better offensive player because he gets on base at a better clip. 385 for his career, 30 points higher than Turner. Now Turner has been healthier and in turn has been more productive than Nimmo, but that's just, again, looking at the ceiling of an offensive player. I'm not saying that Nimmo has a higher ceiling altogether than Trey Turner, but what I would say is people would think that Turner is a vastly superior offensive player, and that is just not the case. Now, you compare him to Bogaerts. Last 3 years, 134, 130, 129. It's comparable to Nimmo. This year, it's identical when it comes to WRC+. He got on base 10% more than Nimmo did. And he had one less homer, but very similar offensive profiles between these two guys. And then you would just weigh the pros and the cons defensively. And I think Nimmo at center and McNeil at second base is far better than Marte in center and, McNeil in right and Bogaerts at second base. And I, again, think that he would maybe be the one that could fall a little bit more into the Mets price range. And this is assuming that you're signing a Jacob deGrom, taking a big portion of that. Now, if you don't sign deGrom, maybe the move is re-sign Diaz and Nimmo and, I don't know, try to address your DH spot. I don't know if that means, getting a Jose Abreu who's going to be out there. Or I really don't know the move. That's the thing is if you retain your free agents, one of the things the Mets are going to run into is you just don't have a lot of room to add, because if you do retain Nimmo, unless you're looking to replace Mark Hanna in left field to make him a very expensive fourth outfielder, what other position are you going to address? Third base, could be an option, but again, you got Beatty on the horizon, and Escobar finished the year strong. You got Lindor, McNeil, and Alonso behind the plate. You expect to have Alvarez. So outside of maybe the DH spot where you'll still have a returning Daniel Vogelback, there's really just not that many places where the Mets can improve offensively. But I guess the third option would be maybe you go completely into your offense where you sign Carlos Correa to a massive contract, you hang on to Nimmo, and there you go. That's a juggernaut team. And then you're free to trade Brett Beatty for a starter. The Mets have endless options here. I think if they were going to go strictly offense, right? Of all the players we mentioned today, Carlos Correa probably presents the biggest potential upgrade over Nimmo, and I don't entirely know how that would fit in defensively, but you could worry about that later and just know that whether it is playing second base or third base, I mean, Correa would be fine. It's just a matter of getting him to agree to that. I think Correa likes being a shortstop, likes being the guy, and I just don't think that's a realistic signing for the Mets. So when you look at these top-tier shortstops, really look at the infield market in general, the Mets are probably best served to keep, the guys that they have right now, to keep McNeil at second. But then it just puts a bigger onus, I believe, to either swing for the fences on Judge or circle the wagon back to Nimmo, because otherwise it's going to be hard to improve offensively next season. Anyway, that's going to be all for today's edition of Locked On Mets. As always, thank you for listening. Make sure you follow, rate, review wherever you get your podcast. Make sure you follow me on Twitter at Finkelstein Ryan. Follow the show at Locked On Mets. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen every day. Now for your second listen, check out Locked On MLB, hosted by Paul Francis Sullivan. Locked On MLB is where you want to go to stay up to date with everything going on in Major League Baseball. You can follow Locked On MLB wherever you get podcasts.